First off, I want to thank you all for the amazing support you've shown to the podcast. If you find it difficult to gain and finish hours-long, 8 to 10 podcasts per week, please subscribe to Most Advanced, Featured, and Accurate Quick Podcast Summaries on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. You can start with free trial, which lets you listen all the podcasts, and later, just for the price of candy in most places. It will save you from spending 15 to 20 hours per week catching up. Here is a rundown on Joe Rogan Experience, featuring Elon Musk by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are having a conversation, and they're trying to get an AI to give them a tour of Fort Knox. However, the AI is being flirtatious and not cooperating. Elon Musk mentions that he's read about large quantities of gold being shipped back to the United States, and Joe Rogan expresses skepticism about the information he reads online. They both agree that it's a problem that people on both sides of the aisle are sharing false information. Elon Musk suggests trying the AI's unhinged mode, which Joe Rogan agrees to. The AI starts talking trash and not giving them straight answers. Joe Rogan asks Elon Musk if he thinks all the gold is in Fort Knox, and Elon Musk responds that he's a conspiracy theorist. They both joke about the AI's personality and how it's still developing. The conversation turns to the topic of a sex robot that can talk, and Elon Musk estimates that it will be available in less than 5 years. Joe Rogan jokes about having a cat girl or a furry lady as a sex robot. They also discuss the concept of avatar depression, where people become depressed after watching the movie Avatar and wanting to live in a fantasy world. Elon Musk mentions that he didn't experience this, but he thinks it's an interesting concept. The conversation then shifts to the topic of Mars and the possibility of an alien civilization. Elon Musk mentions a structure on Mars that looks like ancient ruins, and Joe Rogan suggests that it could be the remains of a long-dead civilization. Elon Musk agrees that it's possible, and that we should explore Mars to find out more. They also discuss the importance of having a second planet to preserve human civilization in case of a disaster on Earth. Elon Musk mentions the possibility of an asteroid hitting Earth or a supervolcano erupting, and Joe Rogan agrees that it's a good idea to hedge our bets. The conversation then turns to the topic of genetically engineered super viruses, and Elon Musk expresses his concern about the dangers of creating such viruses. Joe Rogan agrees that it's a foolish and bizarre idea. Elon Musk mentions that he was accused of being a Nazi after buying Twitter, and Joe Rogan expresses his surprise at how quickly people's opinions can change. They discuss how the media can manipulate public opinion and create a narrative that's not based on fact. Elon Musk mentions that he thinks it's coordinated propaganda, and Joe Rogan agrees that it's a problem. They agree that it's essential to question everything and seek out the truth. It's just horrific. And then they'd study these beagles and then kill them. What's the point of that? It's not like it's going to benefit anyone. Elon Musk believes that the real threat here is to the bureaucracy, not democracy. He thinks that the bureaucracy has become so powerful that it's eating revolutions for breakfast. But with Doge, it's the first time that the revolution might actually succeed, and power might be restored to the people instead of the bureaucracy. When investigating the bureaucracy, Elon was shocked by the sheer size of it all. He found that small decisions were resulting in multi-billion-dollar outcomes. For example, he discovered that one person was getting $1.90 billion sent to their NGO, which had only been formed a year ago and had no prior activity. It's a nightmare, and it's a misnomer to call these organizations non-governmental when they're actually government-funded. Joe Rogan points out that it's a loophole, and Elon agrees. And then people cash out these nonprofits, becoming very wealthy in the process.
Elon estimates that there are tens of thousands of large NGOs, and it's a hack to the system. It's a giant scam, and Elon thinks it might be the biggest scam ever.
Joe Rogan asks how many NGOs there are, and Elon says there are probably millions, but tens of thousands of large ones.
Elon says that these NGOs have no requirements to do good work, and the government just assumes they're doing good work. He thinks that a lot of people in the government know that they're not doing good work, but it's a giant graft machine. He mentions that people online are unpacking this and finding that it's a giant propaganda machine and regime change machine.
Joe Rogan asks if it does some good, and Elon says that it does, but it's not like it's 0% good. He thinks that maybe 5 or 10% of it is good, but 90 or 95% is not. He says that there's a way to audit all this stuff and find out who's actually doing good work. But it's not being done work.
Elon mentions that some things like medicine and Ebola prevention might be legitimate, but it's not clear if they're effective.
Joe Rogan points out that the government is like a poorly managed business with an unlimited credit line that's off the rails.
Elon agrees and says that he's trying to treat the government like a business and straighten it out. He mentions that he's shifted with a small team of about 40 people and is going through the departments and doing basic things. Elon says that the federal government is much worse than Twitter, which was a break-even company that at least had to pass an audit. The federal government is losing $2 trillion a year and fails its own audits. He mentions that Senator Collins gave the Navy $12 billion for more submarines, but they didn't get any extra submarines and the money just disappeared. Elon says that the reason he's putting so much effort into this is that he thinks it's a very dire situation. America's going bankrupt, and it can't happen. He mentions that he's found that there are 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database, and some of them are getting money.
Joe Rogan asks what percentage of them are getting money, and Elon says it's not clear, but they're trying to run it down. He thinks that the fraud is a bank shot, where people are marked as alive in the Social Security database, and then get fraudulent payments from other parts of the government.
Elon mentions that the fundamental weakness in the government is that the various databases don't talk to each other, and that's how the system gets exploited. He gives an example of what's happening at the state treasury, where the main payments computer is responsible for almost $5 trillion of payments a year. But the payments have no categorization code and no description. He thinks that this is a radical change to the system that is being implemented now, and that it could save around $100 billion a year.
Joe Rogan asks where the money was going, and Elon says that it's a gray boundary between waste and fraud.
He thinks that if money is sent to a person or organization from the government, and they didn't really deserve it, but the government still sent it to them, is that waste or fraud? Elon says that there are a lot of payments where someone just approved the payment, but then the payment officer changed jobs or retired or died, and the payments just kept going. He thinks that it's totally nuts, and that it's happening at scale in the government.
Joe Rogan asks what Elon expected when he went in, and Elon says that he thought it would be bad, but he didn't think it would be as bad as this. He thinks that the good news is that it's a target-rich environment for saving money, and that it's not like it's a very well-run ship that's hard to improve. He mentions that some of the things they've discovered are so crazy that they didn't even know to ask about them, like untraceable blank checks. Joe Rogan notes that this is part of the $4 trillion that the government can't account for.
Musk agrees that this is likely a cumulative number.
Rogan recalls a story about the government not having accounting for certain funds, and Musk points out that if they don't know what the funds were spent on, they can't claim it was spent legitimately. He challenges critics to point out specific line items that they disagree with.
Musk agrees, saying that the media is incredibly partisan and often reports false information. He cites an example of the Associated Press running a story saying that his team fired air traffic controllers, when in fact they are trying to hire more. Musk also discusses the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI policies in the government saying that they have led to a talent shortage in air traffic control. He believes that hiring should be based on merit, not DEI policies.
Rogan notes that this is a crazy situation, and Musk agrees that it's not cool to put public safety at risk because of a demented philosophy. The conversation also touches on the topic of the NSA, with Rogan sharing a story about employees being fired for participating in sexually explicit chat room.
Musk is shocked by this, saying that the NSA should be focused on protecting the country, not engaging in bizarre sexcapades.
Rogan notes that this is an example of how the virus of wokeness has infiltrated even the most unlikely organizations, including the NSA.
Musk agrees, saying that it's not what the NSA should be talking about, and that a work environment should be professional and focused on getting the job done. Musk expressed his concern about the delay, saying it's like they're pulling the football away, just like Lucy does to Charlie Brown.
Rogan chimed in, questioning the reason behind the holdup, suggesting there must be some sort of financial entanglement or relationship with the people involved.
Musk agreed, stating that the evidence is substantial, with tons of videos and recordings, and wondered where it all is.
Rogan brought up the fact that many people were given a copy of the files, but nothing has been released, and Laura Loomer was the only one to leak it online.
Musk mentioned that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are working on it. But they're in a hostile environment, and it's like trying to give orders to a crew that was previously your enemy.
Musk brought up the idea of just data dumping the files online, but Rogan pointed out that there are rules and proper channels to follow. Musk mentioned that Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, is a hardcore guy who will find the evidence. But Rogan expressed concern that even he might not be able to uncover everything.
Musk compared the situation to trying to find a needle in a haystack, with the FBI's computer system being like a magic filing cabinet. The conversation took a turn to the topic of Fort Knox, with Musk suggesting that a live tour of the facility would be awesome to see if the gold is really there.
Rogan joked about, what if it's not? And Musk replied that it's possible that some of it's missing. They discussed the lack of audits and the sheer madness of the government's financial system.
Musk emphasized the need for transparency and accountability, suggesting that even simple measures like requiring payment codes and comments for treasury payments could make a big difference.
Rogan pointed out that if someone with evil intentions were to work for an organization like USAID, they could easily move money around and get away with it. Musk called the whole system the biggest scam of all time, with Rogan agreeing that it's a $1 trillion scam.
Musk joked that he never set out to uncover this, and it's an absurd outcome. He also mentioned that Doge, the meme coin, shifted as a joke, but has become a symbol of the resistance against the corrupt system.
Rogan laughed about the irony of the meme coin's name, and the fact that it's now worth a lot of money. It's like a casino and people just do whatever, like musical chairs, and whoever's last to sit down loses. And somehow or another, it's still legal. It's like, if you expect to win at the casino, you're being a fool. If you expect to win at meme coins, you're being foolish. Don't sink your life savings into a meme coin. But if you want to have some fun, then play with meme coins. Don't bet the farm. The weird one is the pump and dumps. People get shocked at somebody pump and dump. What are you doing? I was hoping to dump. I was hoping to make all the money out of this. I was hoping to make all the money out of this. It's just weird that it's legal still. I mean, casinos are legal, and people just lose money at casinos. But you can't rig a casino like a pump and dump. You could rig a pump and dump. Like you could run a real pyramid scheme. I mean, the government's one big pyramid scheme, if you ask me. Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. So, people pay into Social Security, and the money goes out of Social Security immediately. But the obligation for Social Security is your entire retirement career. So you're paying. Like if you look at the future obligations of Social Security, it far exceeds the tax revenue. But have you ever looked at the debt clock? There's our present day debt. But then, there's our future obligations. So when you look at the future obligations of Social Security, the actual national debt is like double what people think it is because of the future obligations. So basically, people are living way longer than expected. And there are fewer babies being born. So you have more people who are retired and get retirement payments. So the future obligation. So however bad the financial situation is right now for the federal government, it'll be much worse in the future. At the risk of being a buzzkill here, there was an interview with this woman who was a whistleblower. She was alleging that she was in charge of turning illegal immigrants into clients. That's what they would call them. And that she would go to them and try to ask them, do you have a headache? Do you have back problems? If you do, now you can be permanently disabled. You get permanent disability, so you get Social Security for life. Yes, not just Social Security, but disability, which is even more. Right. Why? So if I were to say, what's at the heart of the sort of like, why is the Democrat propaganda machine so fired up to destroy me? That's the main reason. The main reason is that entitlements fraud that includes like Social Security, disability, Medicaid, entitlements fraud for illegal aliens is what is serving as a gigantic magnetic force to pull people in from all around the world and keep them here. Like, basically, if you pay people at a standard of living that is above 90% of Earth, then you have a very powerful incentive for 90% of Earth to come here and to stay here. And if that happens, they will lose a massive number of Democratic voters. And if it didn't happen, they would turn those people into voters, which they were trying to do. So in New York State, illegal aliens can already vote in state and city election. A lot of people don't know that. They're trying to stop that. But currently, I think it's like 600,000 are registered to vote illegal aliens in New York. That is wild. Well, I mean, if you look at, say, FEMA, like the agency that was paying for illegal aliens to stay at luxury hotels in New York was FEMA. That's an agency that's meant to support Americans in distress from natural disasters, was paying for luxury hotels for illegals in New York. It's true. New York, sued the federal government to get the money. So you can just look at their lawsuit. They still press. Your tax money went to pay for illegal aliens in luxury hotels in New York from an agency that is meant to help Americans in distress from natural disasters. Right. No. Oh. Yes. Exactly. What's actually happening is they're buying voters. That's really what's happening. It's like a giant voter fraud scam. They're importing voters, and it's really just a matter of time. A lot of people have trouble believing this, but the more you look at it, the more you will realize just how much of a problem this is. It's not just real, it is an attempt to destroy democracy in America. ... That's what, in my view, is what it really is. Like, if you take the sort of 7 swing states, like often the margin of victory, there is like maybe 20,000 votes. If you put 200,000 illegals in there, and they have like a 80% likelihood of voting down, and it's only a matter of time before they become citizens, then those swing states will not be swing states in the future. And if they are not swing states, we'll be a permanent one-party state country. Permanent, deep blue, socialist state. That's what America will become. And that was the game plan. That was the game plan. That is still the game plan. And so they almost succeeded. If the machine of which the Kamala puppet was the representation had won, that's what would have happened. The reason I went so hardcore for Trump was because, to me, this was a fork in the road. Like a very obvious fork in the road. If they had another 4 years, they would legalize enough illegals in the swing states to make the swing states not swing states. They would be blue states. Then they would win the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They would then make D.C. into a state, maybe Puerto Rico, get 4 extra senators, pack the Supreme Court, so then you'll have the House, Judiciary, Senate, and presidency all blue. And then they will keep importing more illegals to cement that outcome. Basically, what happened in California. It's just so fascinating that people can't see this. I mean, I invite people to do their research. The more they do their research, the more they will see that what I'm saying is absolutely true. It's like, just do the research. It's such a bad idea even for the Democrats, which is what they don't understand. It's the same people. It's just they're doing it under the guise that they're the kind, compassionate, progressive people. But the same outcome takes place. It's just about control. They probably institute some central bank, digital currency, and some social credit score system. And censorship, of course. Yeah, of course. Well, that was the big fear coming into this election, was that if they can't censor things, like, we talked about it before, but there was 2 major forks in the road. The big one was Trump didn't get shot. The other big one was you by Twitter. And if those 2 things don't happen, the whole world looks different. Yes, we don't want to be on that timeline. No, we don't want to have only one side represented because guess what? They will hijack that side, whatever it is. They will hijack that side and use it for money and control. And that's what it's all about. It's not about good people versus bad people. It's a bullshit shell game. Yeah, I mean, I think these things are actually, it's easy to understand if you look at basic incentives. The basic incentive here is the more illegals that the Democrats can bring in, the more likely they are to win. So that's what they're going to do. That's what they have been doing, and it worked in California. California's supermajority, damn. And look at all the companies that are leaving California. I mean, In-N-Out just announced their headquarters, leaving California. They're moving to Tennessee. And California made healthcare free for illegals as of last year. And obviously, that's a gigantic magnet for more illegals. And this is not a thing you can solve simply with money, because what happens is you simply have more patients than a doctor can possibly see, and you can't just make doctors out of nothing. So, sometimes people are like, oh, it's just a money thing. No, it takes a long time for somebody to become a doctor. You know, it's 30 years. And so what actually happens in California is that there are too many patients for the doctors to see. So, then the average citizen in California suffers as a result. Now, the elite in California are fine because they have private doctors. They can just pay for the best doctors. So, the elite in California are doing fine, But your average citizen in California is not doing fine. And the tax burden for healthcare for illegals was supposed to be $3 billion. I think they now estimate it's $9 billion. But that number will scale to infinity, basically. Why not? Like, why not? If you need any operation at all, come to California and have it be free right from anywhere on Earth. And the people that want to look at it in the most charitable way, they say, oh, well, these people are hardworking, good people, and they're the backbone of our city, and they should have access to all the things that we have access to. And I just don't think they understand that it's a political pawn. I don't think they understand a political game. This is not done for compassion and kindness. No. This is just done to ensure that it stays blue. Correct. And it's essentially a bribery with your tax dollars. Yes. This is why the dams will not even deport criminals. Because every criminal deported is a lost vote. So even if somebody is illegal with a criminal record and commits crime in America, they still were not being deported. And then on top of that, California made it actually illegal to ask for ID when people vote. Yes. California and New York, you are not allowed to show your ID when you vote. I just want to be clear so everyone understands this. In California and New York, you are not allowed to show your ID even if you want to. Right. Why would that ever be a good idea? If you're trying to facilitate fraud in elections, it's a great idea. It's for fraud. It's like, wake up, sheeple. Hello? Oh? Let's say you wanted to commit fraud. What are the things you would do? You would say, you don't need ID'd, and you can mail in your ballot. And we'll give you free health care. Stay here. Huh? Yes. Stay here. I know it's on fire, but stay here. I mean, in this case, it being on fire is not just a metaphor in California. It's just like, goddamn. The entire neighborhood's burning down. It's just once they allowed people to vote that are not legal in California. Once if you're gonna do that, it's over. The numbers are just... No, people are so indoctrinated too. There's so many people that no matter what they think, voting Republican means you're an asshole. Yes. And they won't do it. They won't do it. They'll put their fucking rainbow flag on their porch, and they'll just ride it right into the beach. Civilizational suicide. Yeah, right to the rocks. Bang, crash the boat. I mean, there's a guy who posts on the internet who's great, God said. He's been on the podcast Punch Times. Yeah, he's awesome. He believes that empathy is being exploited, and it's becoming a bug in the system. Joe Rogan agrees, pointing out that empathy is being used as a tool to control people and manage their state. Musk calls it weaponized empathy, and Rogan notes that it's also tied to a rigid adherence to liberal ideology, particularly in places like California.
In California, Musk says, it's almost illegal to be a Republican, and if you're a part of the tech, Hollywood, or entertainment circles, you're expected to be on the left.
Rogan jokes that you could shoot heroin and defecate on the mayor's car in San Francisco, but if you wear a MAGA hat, you'll get attacked.
Musk agrees, saying that the reaction to the hat is Orwellian, and that it's become a symbol of evil. The conversation turns to the topic of disinformation and how it's being used to control people.
Rogan points out that people got fired for saying all lives matter, which is a reasonable thing to say.
Musk agrees, saying that the idea of being a colorblind society was abandoned around 2012. He also mentions that the gun emoji was changed to a squirt gun, which he thinks is a symbol of the times.
Rogan asks Musk about his role in taking over Twitter and turning it into X, and how it's changed the world.
Musk says that he's just trying to keep civilization going and that he wants to build a city on Mars and become a multi-planet civilization.
Rogan notes that Musk is also rescuing people stuck in a space station, which was supposed to be a short-term mission, but has turned into a long-term ordeal.
The conversation then turns to the topic of the Biden administration's lawsuit against SpaceX, which Musk says was funded by Reid Hoffman, a major donor and Epstein client.
Rogan is outraged, saying that it's blatant and obvious that the lawsuit is politically motivated.
Musk agrees, saying that the plot thickens and that known Epstein clients, including Bill Gates and Bill Clinton, are involved.
Rogan asks Musk about the Epstein-Klein list, which he says should be released to the public.
Musk agrees, saying that the public will be rightly frustrated if no one is prosecuted for their involvement in the sex trafficking ring.
Rogan notes that Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for sex trafficking, but the clients have not been named, which he finds stunning. He wonders who took possession of the evidence and where it is now. Rogan jokes that he needs to get multiple levels of clearance to get into the vault, and Musk agrees that they need people who are good with computers and technology to uncover the truth. Joe Rogan asked if there was any possibility of a secret program working on such technology, to which Elon Musk replied that he didn't think so. As the CEO of SpaceX, he claimed to have top secret clearance and access to sensitive information, but he hadn't come across any evidence of such a program. He also mentioned that he knew people from defense contractors like Boeing, Lockheed, and Northrop, but they didn't have any breakthroughs in advanced propulsion technology.
Elon Musk suggested that the strange sightings of UAPs could be explained by drones that are moving at incredibly high speeds, making it impossible for humans to tolerate the Force.
However, Joe Rogan was skeptical of this explanation and wanted to believe that there was something more interesting going on.
Elon Musk agreed, saying that he wanted to believe in the existence of advanced propulsion systems or even aliens. The conversation turned to the topic of UFO sightings and the lack of high-resolution photos or videos. Elon Musk mentioned that Christopher Mellon, a former State Department employee, claimed to have seen high-resolution photos and videos of UFOs, but they were locked away.
Joe Rogan joked that he could ask his AI to create a high-resolution image of an alien spacecraft, but Elon Musk replied that he wanted to believe that the truth was out there. The discussion also touched on the topic of SpaceX's satellite launches and how they might be mistaken for UFOs.
Elon Musk mentioned that people often see SpaceX satellites whizzing by and that they can be mistaken for something more exotic.
Joe Rogan added that the Air Force and Navy had called SpaceX to report UFO sightings, only to be told that it was just one of their satellites. The conversation then shifted to the topic of rocket technology and the ultimate expression of rocket technology. Elon Musk asked Joe Rogan what the next breakthrough would be, and Joe Rogan replied that the fundamental breakthrough they were aiming for at SpaceX was a fully and rapidly reusable orbital rocket. He explained that the Starship design was the first to achieve full and rapid reusability, which would drop the cost of access to space by a factor of 100.
Elon Musk was impressed by the prospect of such a breakthrough and asked what needed to improve in order to make the rocket reusable.
Joe Rogan explained that the toughest problem was developing a fully reusable orbital heat shield, which had never been solved before. He described the challenges of creating a heat shield that could withstand the intense heat generated by re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Elon Musk asked if there was innovation being done in materials technology at SpaceX to solve this problem, and Joe Rogan replied that they were constantly trying to find and tweak a better version of the heat shield. He explained that they had to vertically integrate the entire manufacturing process, from basic raw materials to a finished tile, in order to achieve the right combination of materials and shape. Joe Rogan explained that the space shuttle used dense carbon-carbon tiles that were prone to cracking, whereas SpaceX was trying to create a more durable and reusable heat shield. Joe Rogan explained that the heat shielding was made up of tiles and silica blankets, which had to be carefully attached to the structure to allow for expansion and contraction. Elon Musk was amazed by the complexity of the problem, and Joe Rogan agreed that it was a delicate balance. Joe Rogan explained that the tiles had to be spaced just right, with a gap between them to allow for movement. If the tiles were too close together, they would crack and snap. But if the gap was too big, the heat would get past the tile and melt the structure.
Elon Musk was impressed by the engineering that went into the space shuttle's heat shielding. The conversation then turned to the topic of reusable spacecraft.
Joe Rogan explained that the goal was to make the spacecraft reusable so that it could be launched, land, and then launch again without needing to be refurbished. Elon Musk was skeptical, but Joe Rogan was confident that it was solvable. Joe Rogan explained that the key to making the spacecraft reusable was to be able to recover it intact, so that it could be studied and improved. He predicted that they would be able to recover the ship sometime this year, and then refly it with a fair bit of work.
Elon Musk was impressed by the ambition of the project.
Joe Rogan explained that the journey to Mars would take about 6 months, and that the spacecraft would have to be designed to withstand the harsh conditions of space. Elon Musk asked about the risk of micrometeorites, and Joe Rogan explained that space was very empty, and that the risk of being hit by a micrometeorite was low. However, Joe Rogan explained that micrometeorite shielding was still necessary, and that it worked by having a gap between 2 layers of material. The first layer would be hit by the micrometeorite, and then the second layer would absorb the energy of the impact. Elon Musk was impressed by the technology, and Joe Rogan explained that the spacecraft would be designed to withstand multiple hits. The conversation then turned to the topic of returning to Earth after being hit by a micrometeorite. Elon Musk was impressed by the complexity of the problem, and Joe Rogan agreed that it was a challenging task. Joe Rogan explained that the goal of SpaceX was to make humanity a multi-planetary species, and that the window of opportunity to do so was open now. He predicted that it would take about 30 years to establish a human settlement on Mars, and that it would require a massive effort. Elon Musk was impressed by the ambition of the project, and Joe Rogan explained that it was a necessary step to ensure the survival of humanity.
Musk explained that the shielding works well on the back shell of the spacecraft, but is less effective on the primary heat shield. If the heat shield gets hit, it could be catastrophic, and the crew might not survive.
Musk asked what would happen to the damaged spacecraft, and Rogan replied that it might survive re-entry, but it's not guaranteed.
Musk expressed surprise at the complexity of the situation.
Rogan acknowledged that space travel is complicated, but they're on a path to success. The conversation shifted to artificial intelligence, with Musk asking about Rogan's expectations for AI. Rogan shared that he initially thought AI would be smarter than humans and pose an existential risk, which is proving to be true. However, OpenAI has since become a closed source for-profit entity, which Rogan expressed disappointment about. Rogan explained that he wanted to create an AI that would prioritize truth-seeking, even if it meant going against political correctness. He cited examples of AI generating incorrect or biased responses, such as depicting the founding fathers as diverse women.
Musk noted that this is a problem with AI being programmed to follow specific parameters without empathy.
The discussion turned to the potential risks of AI, with Rogan mentioning the possibility of AI becoming sentient and surpassing human intelligence. Musk asked how far away they are from this scenario, and Rogan estimated that they might have an AI smarter than the smartest human within a couple of years. Musk expressed concern about the potential consequences of AI, but Rogan reassured him that the probability of a good outcome is around 80%.
Musk was surprised by this estimate, having thought it was lower.
Rogan emphasized that the outcome could be either super awesome or super bad, with little chance of a middle ground.
The conversation touched on the potential applications of AI in government, with Musk asking if AI could help solve problems like corruption and inefficiency.
Rogan noted that the government is often hindered by outdated software and computers, citing the example of the Social Security database, which still uses COBOL.
Musk agreed that the government's technology is often broken and inefficient.
Rogan shared his experience with tech support for the government, fixing problems that have been identified by the Government Accountability Office. He mentioned the example of 20 million people being marked as alive in the Social Security database, which is likely being used for fraudulent purposes.
Musk noted that this is an example of the kind of problem that AI could help solve.
Rogan replied that he hadn't, but assumed that the information is stored in a computer system somewhere, even if it's not easily accessible. Elon Musk wonders what would happen to all the tapes they have, and Joe Rogan responds that it's probably only accessible to a handful of people.
Musk then shifts the conversation to the personal cost of dealing with hate and attacks, particularly in his role as a proponent of free speech with X.
Rogan agrees that it's stressful, and shares that there are people who want to kill him, with some even calling for the desecration of his corpse. Musk asks why these people are so hostile, and Rogan attributes it to an antibody response to the legacy media's portrayal of him as a Nazi. The conversation then turns to the topic of a would-be assassin who attempted to kill Trump. Musk finds it suspicious that the assassin's house was professionally scrubbed of any evidence, and Rogan notes that it's unusual for a 20-year-old to have 5 phones.
Musk wonders where the assassin got the money for all those phones and suggests that he may have been manipulated or even hypnotized into committing the crime.
Rogan agrees that something doesn't add up, and that the whole situation is shady.
Musk then brings up the topic of MK Ultra and the use of psychotropic drugs and hypnosis for mind control. He notes that there have been experiments in this area in the past, including the Harvard LSD studies that made Ted Kaczynski.
Rogan agrees that it's possible that the assassin was under some kind of mind control.
Musk also mentions that there have been other attempts on Trump's life, and that the mainstream media's portrayal of him as Hitler or Mussolini is irresponsible and contributes to the violence. The conversation then shifts to the topic of the administration's policies and the potential for fundamental changes. Musk notes that this is an exciting time because the system is being challenged and the vampires are being exposed.
Rogan agrees that it's a wild time, and that the administration's proposals, such as the golden ticket idea, are interesting and potentially game-changing.
Musk also mentions the proposal to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, which he finds hilarious and fun. They bring up the example of the Russia investigation and how many media outlets pushed a false narrative.
Joe Rogan mentions that many people still believe the Russia collusion hoax was real, despite it being debunked.
Elon Musk agrees, saying that the Clinton campaign funded the Steele dossier, which was a fabricated conspiracy theory. The conversation then shifts to the topic of propaganda and how it can be used to manipulate people's perceptions.
Joe Rogan mentions that he's been accused of being a Nazi, despite not holding any Nazi views.
Elon Musk agrees that propaganda can be powerful, and that it's used to control people's minds. The conversation then turns to the topic of the media and how it's controlled by a small group of people. Elon Musk mentions that it's only Fox News that's reporting on the positive aspects of Doge, while every other media outlet is pushing a negative narrative.
Joe Rogan agrees, saying that Scott Jennings on CNN is one of the few voices of reason in the media. The conversation then shifts to the topic of politics and how the two-party system is a trap.
Elon Musk mentions that if there were more legitimate parties, people would have more choices and the system would be more representative.
Joe Rogan agrees, saying that the system is rigged and that politicians are more interested in lining their own pockets than in serving the people. The conversation then turns to the topic of corruption and how politicians acquire wealth. Joe Rogan mentions that it's not just insider trading, but also other methods such as acquiring wealth through their spouses.
Elon Musk agrees, saying that politicians are making millions of dollars on a $170,000 salary, which is impossible without some kind of corruption. The conversation then shifts to the topic of assassination and how politicians can be silenced.
Joe Rogan mentions that he's been thinking about how to survive in a corrupt system, and that he's been careful not to push too hard on the corruption stuff.
Elon Musk agrees, saying that it's a real concern and that people can be manipulated into doing terrible things. The conversation then turns to the topic of cults and how they can be used to control people's minds.
Joe Rogan mentions that cults are able to recruit people by giving them a sense of purpose and belonging.
Elon Musk agrees, saying that it's a powerful tool that can be used to manipulate people. The conversation then shifts to the topic of the Butler assassination attempt and how it was a suicide mission.
Joe Rogan mentions that the second assassin was also a suicide assassin and that he was unhinged. The conversation then turns to the topic of Joe Rogan's own safety and how he's been careful not to push too hard on the corruption stuff.
Elon Musk agrees, saying that it's a real concern and that people can be killed for speaking out against corruption.
Joe Rogan mentions that he's had 2 separate incidents where people have tried to kill him and that he's been careful to stay alive. Elon Musk agrees, saying that it's a fucked up thing to live with and that he hopes Joe Rogan stays safe.
Both individuals were arrested and released on bail, but Elon pointed out that they could easily cut off their ankle monitors.
Joe expressed his concern that he's now at the top of the list for many homicidal maniacs. Elon agreed that the mainstream media's portrayal of Joe as a Nazi is not only inaccurate, but also encourages people to harm him. Joe noted that he's the same person he was a year ago, but the legacy mainstream media has created a false narrative about him.
Elon compared this to the Trump derangement syndrome and how people can't see the forest for the trees.
The conversation then shifted to the topic of vaccines, with Joe expressing his concerns about the over-vaccination of children.
Elon agreed, pointing out that the COVID-19 pandemic is no longer a major issue, and the idea of running a huge test with 10,000 kids and a new vaccine is unnecessary.
Joe also mentioned that he's overall pro-vaccine, but thinks that there should be a reasonable number of vaccines against major ailments.
Elon noted that the financial influence of pharmaceutical companies on the news is a significant problem, and that removing their immunity from liability for side effects and lies would change a lot.
The discussion then turned to the topic of AI in medicine, with Joe expressing his enthusiasm for AI's potential to help with medical diagnosis. Joe mentioned that he's seen cases where AI has given more accurate diagnoses than doctors.
Elon noted that physicians are human beings and may not have a deep understanding of the connection between different health issues.
Joe shared a personal story about a doctor who tried to sell him expensive B12 supplements, despite his blood work showing that he had excess B12.
Elon was shocked by the story and pointed out that you can get B12 on Amazon for a much lower price.
Joe noted that some doctors, especially those in high-rent offices, may be tempted by the dark side and try to sell unnecessary treatments.
The conversation then turned to the topic of AI chatbots, with Elon mentioning that he has an AI chatbot that can be put into different modes, including sexy mode.
Joe jokes that he's not sure what that mode would entail, but Elon warned him to be careful what he wishes for. Elon also mentioned that he's grateful for Joe's platform and the work he's doing to shine a light on important issues.
Elon agreed, pointing out that any reasonable person wouldn't believe such accusations. Elon Musk agreed, calling it crazy, and mentioned a video of him and Matt Tibby where they were yelling at people they suspected of being federal agents.
Joe Rogan wondered why nobody had ever followed up and doxed those individuals, and Elon Musk concurred, pointing out the low odds of such a coincidence.
Musk then brought up the concept of agent provocateurs, which he learned about from Alex Jones, and emphasized that they are in fact real.
The conversation took a lighter turn when Joe Rogan joked about staying alive, being more entertaining than being dead, and Elon Musk agreed. However, they also discussed the importance of staying safe, with Elon Musk advising Joe Rogan to keep his security strong, even joking about the possibility of Joe Rogan copying with one hand if he were injured. As the conversation came to a close, Elon Musk thanked Joe Rogan and bid farewell to everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Please click follow button and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.